Hello and welcome to another episode of Town Talk. I'm your host, Connor Lynch, Government Media Specialist for Westwood Media Center. Town Talk is a program where we sit down and speak with important decision makers for our fair town in order to understand just what makes it great. Today I'm happy to welcome back our two inaugural guests who will kickstart this program. Two guests who are perhaps the most influential people in our town, and two people that need no introduction. It's my honor to have State Senator Michael Rush and State Representative Paul McMurtry back in the studio today. Gentlemen, thank you for joining.
Thank you,
Thanks,
Connor. Great
Glad
to
you
be
guys,
here.
Yeah, found the place okay, you know.
Absolutely.
Second, third time that you guys have been back here,
It's
so.
great to be here.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you for having us back.
I just wanted to give a brief couple of minutes to kind of talk a little bit about yourselves, kind of the career that you guys have had in politics, and kind of give people an idea about who you guys are. So, Representative, we can start with you.
Sure, happy to. Well, I was first elected to the House of Representatives in 2007. I came from private business, small business. I have the privilege of being the ambassador and the current owner of the Dedham Community Theater, a venue, an entertainment venue that I worked at when I was a teenager. And through my campaigning in 2007, when the seat became open, a lot of folks, when I was knocking on doors, said to me, you know, we'll support you and vote for you as long as you keep that theater open. So it's a unique perspective, but I bring that small business background and being able to stay in touch with the community and those who, the patrons of the theater, into the State House and work every day on behalf of the interests of the folks here in Westwood and towns of Dedham and Walpole. So it's been 11 years now, and hope to continue to serve in the House.
Keep going strong.
I hope so.
Absolutely. Senator Rush.
Great. Thank you, Connor. It's a privilege and honor to represent the people of the town of Westwood in the Massachusetts State Senate, working with Representative McMurtry and working to get results for the residents who live here. I've represented the Norfolk and Suffolk District in the Massachusetts State Senate since I got elected in 2010. The district is comprised of the city of Boston, neighborhoods of West Roxbury, Rosendale, High Park, Reedville, and Forest Hills, Jamaica Plain, as well as the towns of Dedham, Westwood, Norwood, Dover, and half of the town of Needham.
That's a lot to keep track of.
It is. It's a great district, very diverse district, and just really an honor and a privilege every day to go to the State House and work in the Senate on behalf of the Norfolk and the Suffolk District and the town of Westwood. I'm very proud to chair the Committee on Veterans Affairs in the Massachusetts State Senate, and we'll talk a little bit about that, I know, later. But prior to that, I served in the Massachusetts House of Representatives for 8 years, representing the 10th Suffolk District, which was West Roxbury, Rosendale, and South Brookline, and enjoyed that tremendously. Prior to that, I was a teacher at Catholic Memorial High School. I'm a lifelong resident of West Roxbury. My other, when I'm not being an elected official, I've served for 23 years in the United States Navy in the reserve component as an intelligence officer, and continue to do that, which I really enjoy as well. And I, as I said, live in West Roxbury with my wife Mary and my son James, my daughter Kira, and feel extremely privileged to have this job and to work with great elected officials like Representative McMurtry and other folks that we work with to move communities like Westwood and our Commonwealth of Massachusetts forward. So it's great to be here today to talk about some of the things going on. So thank you so much
Absolutely.
for having us.
Glad to have you here. I'm actually kind of disappointed because I went to Catholic Memorial as well. I graduated 2010, but I must have just missed
You
your
missed
tenure.
me, yes. Yeah, correct.
Yeah. So I want to jump first to our major question, and our major question kind of relates into the biggest political thing that people can kind of be talking about now, which is the state elections that are coming up in November.
Sure.
For people who do not know, the elections are held on November 6th. That's a Tuesday. I think it's the day after Veterans Day. And that day, you know, polls will be open, at least in Westwood, from 7 a.m. until 8 p.m. So people who are not familiar or are not unsure, you need to get out and double check your voter status and get out there and vote on that day. And while I know that both of your guys' names will be on the ballot, Mr. McMurtry, I believe that you are going up against another person for re-election. How has your re-election and your campaign been going so far?
So far, so good. In addition to continuing doing the job and delivering back for the district and the citizens that live in these wonderful communities, I've been campaigning and continue to listen and address the priorities, the concerns, and the issues that people have, working with Senator Rush, our colleagues in the legislature, so that we can continue to bring back these results. So, as I had alluded to, voters have a choice this election, and with being out on the campaign trail, continuing to listen and work on their behalf, I'm hoping that they see me fit to, that I've earned the opportunity to go back and to continue to serve and continue to bring back the resources and the back to the district.
And hopefully make those 11 years a lot longer.
I hope so.
Absolutely. And so while we're on the topic of doing your work and things like that, I know that you were the primary sponsor of a bill that just went through and was passed a few months ago about raising the tobacco age up to 21.
Yep.
And I was wondering if you can talk a little bit about that and the process behind it and what effect you think it's going to have for the Commonwealth.
Sure. I appreciate you mentioning that. I'm quite proud of that. I know Senator Rush was a co-sponsor, along with about 104 of our colleagues in both the House and Senate. The primary objective of the legislation, which Governor Baker just signed into law, will come into effect on January 1st. It takes the age of purchasing tobacco products in the Commonwealth from 18 to 21. And the basis of that is that the source of tobacco for 15, 16, and 17-year-olds came from 18, 19, and 20-year-olds. So medical science has shown that the brain is not fully developed, and the nicotine addiction can take control of a young mind and a young brain, and those who start smoking at that young age have a 90% chance of being addicted for life. So it was an amazing, comprehensive piece of legislation that also bans pharmacies from selling tobacco products in the Commonwealth. It's going to save millions, if not billions, of dollars in healthcare costs in the years to come. And more importantly and more significantly, it's going to save lives. So really proud of that, and proud that my colleague here in the Senate was a major supporter of it, and hope to continue to see a difference as the evolution and technology of delivering nicotine and tobacco products with juuling and electronic cigarettes, as those come into the fold. And we might have to go back and readdress it, but hopefully we prevented and stopped this epidemic from growing in young lives in the Commonwealth.
And that's something that I wanted to bring up when you were first mentioning it was, the high rise of new technology about juuling and things like that. And it sounds like this bill may need to be modified in the future.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're and again, working with our partners in the federal government, Congressman Lynch and Senator Markey, Senator Warren. We live in a state in this Commonwealth that's full of innovation and technology and creativity, and we applaud that and we encourage it and support it. When the innovation and technology affects the health and well-being of the young citizens of the Commonwealth, that's when public policy has to come into place to put some preventative measures. So that's something we're going to be taking a look at in the upcoming session.
Absolutely. And you mentioned your co-sponsor, so I do want to throw it over to Senator
Right,
Rush.
sure, absolutely.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about the BRAVE Act. Now, this was an act that was signed into law by Governor Baker just a few months ago, just as well. And I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit about what that act is
Sure.
and what kind of effect that's going to have for veterans.
Sure, absolutely. Massachusetts is home to almost 400,000 veterans and their families. And I'm very proud to let you know and the people of this community know that Massachusetts stands number one out of all 50 states in the benefits that we provide to our veterans and their families. And this has come about by major pieces of legislation passed since 2011, co-sponsored by Representative McMurtry and other members of the legislature. And the BRAVE Act is continuing on this idea that we've got a lot of work to do. Although we're number one, there's still many holes that need to be plugged to ensure that our veterans are receiving the services that they're certainly entitled to. So we authored the BRAVE Act, and with Representative John Lawn, my co-chair from Watertown, co-sponsored by Representative McMurtry and many legislators. The legislation was passed bipartisanly, unanimously, and went to Governor Baker's desk for his signature. And in him signing that, in the support that he and Secretary Urena are giving in terms of the legislation provided for veterans, is keeping Massachusetts number one in benefits that we're giving to our veterans and their families and our Gold Star families, to say thank you for your service and acknowledge and realize. And people are generally surprised to to know that Massachusetts is #1. And it's not because the legislature, there's 200 members of the legislature, 40 members of the Senate, 160 members of the House. The legislature probably has the fewest veterans in that body since World War II. So it's not that the legislature is full of veterans, passing veterans legislation. It's quite the opposite. Fewest amount of veterans. This is a perfect example of democracy at work. What it says is that the people of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts have demanded that we give tremendous benefits to veterans and their families, and the legislature as a whole, and the executive, the governor, and Governor Patrick have listened, and they've responded, and because of it, it is really a great example of civics at work. People speaking, elected members listening, and a result happening that benefits veterans, Gold Star families, and veterans' families. So it really is something to be very proud of in Westwood, in every community across the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. And people are often surprised when we tell them that we have the best benefits, and we're really proud of it.
Yeah.
There's still work to be done. I run into veterans all the time, and I know Rep. McMurtry does, and they say, hey, look, there's still a gap here, a gap there. We want to hear from you. If you're watching this program and you know a way that we can improve veteran services, we encourage you to reach out to our offices so that we can work with you. And that's where the best ideas have come from. It's been from advocates and veterans and family members, Gold Star families, who've approached legislators and say, why isn't Massachusetts doing more of this? Or here's an issue that we need to address.
Which I'm glad that you allude to, because it's not just what's coming from your offices, it's what's coming from your citizens. It's hearing what they have to say, and every voice matters.
Connor,
Every
you
voice
couldn't be
counts.
more correct in that. The best ideas come from the citizenry, and we're able to work with wonderful folks who have terrific ideas, and we take those ideas and we take them to our colleagues on Beacon Hill, and we try to work out a great product. You're exactly right. That's what the process is.
Absolutely. I often fear that people think or have the illusion that their voice doesn't matter, and you're speaking about the perfect example that it absolutely does.
Absolutely, 100%.
And since we're speaking about the people, I did want to transition a little bit into the National Grid lockout.
Sure.
And I know that you were in support of this. A few months ago, you were out at Government Center,
That's right.
and you were standing alongside those workers. And I wonder if you can talk a little bit about what that lockout is and why you support it.
With the workers in front of the State House, they made their way up the street, and the reality is we feel, I know the rep, I'm not going to speak for him, but I know we're on the same page with this. We feel that the workers who've been locked out, it's just disgraceful. These folks are professionals. They are outstanding workers. They are the reason that this system works. They have put their heart and soul into providing a tremendous service to the people of Massachusetts with the safety component to make sure that we are safe. And now these folks are struggling each and every day on the side of the lockout. Their families are struggling, health care issues, economic issues, and it's simply wrong, and it needs to be corrected immediately. And these folks need to be put back to work for the economic well-being and the safety of the citizens of Massachusetts.
Absolutely. And I can see that you're passionate about it, that you get fired up about it. And I think that this is a very important issue that people need to know about a lot more, because I feel like, you know, there's small little posts. There's a lot of people who work with National Grid who are on that side of the lockout who post about this on social media, on Twitter and on Facebook. And I feel that not a lot of people might not know how big of an issue that is. And I'm glad to see that it's not just limited to those workers,
Sure.
but it's coming to you guys. You guys are standing with them. You are making it known that they're not standing alone,
Sure.
and that these important issues are being addressed and talked about, not
Yeah.
just through their own circles, but with important officials like you.
And unfortunately, this is history repeating itself in a very bad way. Unions are vitally important to the economy and the well-being of our Commonwealth and our nation. And if you look historically, the benefits that so many enjoy today were built on the backs and the blood, sweat, and tears of organized labor. And this is history repeating itself, again, in a very negative way. We need to get these workers back to work. We need to get everybody to the bargaining table, work this out, and get this issue resolved immediately.
Absolutely.
Connor, I will just add that we don't have to look too far to other than our neighbors in Lawrence and Andover, North Andover, to see that the professional expertise of these workers needs to be settled and brought back on so that they can maintain this very important infrastructure that services everyone throughout the Commonwealth. So, I mean, we're in a business where collaboration and compromise is paramount, and that's what we're asking the executives of National Grid to do with their workers and get these men and women back on the job. I know Speaker DeLeo just this week requested to the administration the input from Governor Baker and Lieutenant Governor Polito to see what this is costing the Commonwealth and how we can bring some resolution to this. So that's what we do in the work that we do every day, negotiate, compromise, try to find some common ground, and we urge that National Grid do the same.
Absolutely. And I'm glad that we took some time to talk about that because
Absolutely. It's really important. People need to know about it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I wanted to transition a little bit, and I wanted to focus a little bit on the work that you guys do. And I wanted to give a bit of an explanation for people who might not be familiar with the process of some of the stuff that happens in terms of bills being voted on or not being voted on. One thing that when I was trying to research things to talk about on the air today, one thing that kind of popped into my head is what happens to the bills that aren't voted on at all? There's a lot that get a yes vote or a no vote, but what actually happens to votes that, or to what happens to bills or proposed laws that never get voted on?
First of all, I just want to applaud your interest in trying to bring to your viewers, the residents of Weston and beyond, a better understanding of the process. I will just a quick public service announcement. That's why I and Senator Rush avid supporters and believers in the State House intern program. We bring in some young high school and college students so that they can see firsthand this process. As you probably researched or learned in your research, that there's between 5,000 or 6,000 bills filed each legislative session, and all of them get a hearing. All of them get a committee hearing and go before the body. The public has input, whether you support or against something. And then the committee then decides whether or not that bill moves forward. And a certain handful of those move forward. So if some are reported to study, some are voted not to pass, doesn't mean that's the end. There's a misnomer, if you will, that means it's the death of legislation. For example, the tobacco bill with over 100 co-sponsors that the governor signed into law, Governor Baker signed into law, that was a refile. So each bill goes through a deliberate public process, and I know for myself, I'm glad that does. We don't want to live in a commonwealth or in a country, for that matter, that every bill that's filed passes into law. I mean, to think of what the chaos that would cause. So there's a very deliberate, intentional process that might be misunderstood outside, but I know both of our offices open the doors to the young students in the district, and hopefully the future rep and senators and public servants for them to understand. And I know some of the bills that I filed this session, if I'm fortunate to win re-election and go back, I'll be refiling some of them and continue that. There's always an opportunity to improve on it, to remove some language or add some language that makes the bill better and stronger and positions it for success.
And I guess another thing that I wanted to kind of address is, you mentioned with your tobacco bill, and I fear that some people might hear that, like you said, something gets sent into review, something gets sent and refile, and then it just kind of dies.
Yeah.
Do you know approximately when that bill was first proposed? I mean, if it was signed into law in July of 2018, how long ago did that process start?
I believe I had a meeting in 2014 that first started that conversation about this is something that we need to take up as a legislative body to enact laws statewide. Because a lot of cities and towns, the local boards of health, were starting these conversations and raising the age. So it was a little bit of a confusing playing field, if you will, throughout the Commonwealth. So I believe those conversations started in early 2014 and continued over almost 5 years.
Absolutely.
And I think the other important piece of it is, as Representative McMurtry mentioned, 5,000 to 6,000 bills filed in a 2-year session. Every single one of them gets a public hearing, and then they move through this legislative process. But all 200 members, all 40 members of the Senate, all 160 members of the House, we all have our say on legislation. So what's something that may be really, really good for a town that we represent maybe isn't so good for another region in the state. And with the fact that 200 people all have a say on legislation, that means compromise is really important, because again, what may be good for here may not be so good for Cape Cod or the Berkshires. And you have 200 people with 200 different backgrounds, 200 different personalities, 200 different set of expertise. We have folks in the legislature with any type of background, you name it. So they come at it from different perspectives when we talk about issues. So that is important to understand. It's not like bills, and to your point, I believe on average, any bill that does become law, generally it's 6 to 8 years on average for it to become law. Often the bill has been tweaked significantly, and many of these 5,000 to 6,000 bills maybe will never become law. So, and as the rep mentioned, I don't think anybody every 2 years would want to live under 5,000 or 6,000 new laws and regulations. It would be just
Absolutely.
craziness.
A lot to keep track of as well.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. So while we're talking a little bit about the sessions and stuff like that, I know we alluded to the tobacco bill, to the BRAVE Act. I'm wondering if you guys can kind of reflect a little bit on the previous session, maybe something that came out of it that might not necessarily have been from you guys, but could have been, that you're very proud of, that you're happy that came out of that, or maybe as you're looking forward into the future, something that you're happy is coming up, something that you're looking forward to seeing actually out there.
Go ahead, Representative.
Thank you, Senator. Always a gentleman. One of the things, in addition to the Tobacco 21, a lot of the personal focus of my legislation is consumer protection. And I feel this enormous sense of obligation and responsibility to make sure we protect consumers, especially the most vulnerable, our children, our seniors. Another healthcare component of aspect of a bill that I filed was around Alzheimer's and dementia. Again, another bill that was refiled and through the last 3 or 4 years, couple sessions, where it's now required for physicians to be included in their continuing education requirements and awareness of dementia and Alzheimer's. So that was something that was significant. Governor Baker signed into law about 6 weeks or so ago. And we know that dementia, Alzheimer's is touching everyone, whether it's personally or indirectly, in our families and in our communities. Another focus that I know both Senator Rush and I continue to work on and have worked on is this opioid crisis that we face. So that's something that we'll continue to work on, to be able to find an alternative way of pain management and alternative services for those who have become addicted to these very harmful drugs and need help. That's where I think government, certainly serves a role. It's very tiring and tasking for families and individuals going through these tragic times, and where government can step in and say, hey, we can help you. We're there to listen. We understand the situation you're going through. You're not alone. And we're going to try to provide these resources so that you can get the help you need. So I know that's another focus that we continue to look at.
Absolutely.
Yeah, those would be two things that also I was happy to support. Over 130,000 residents of Massachusetts suffering with Alzheimer's and dementia. So this is a major piece of legislation we both worked on. Representative McMurtry in the House, myself in the Senate. It's really, really important. We talk about that issue, talk about opioids. We run into constituents all the time. These are two major issues, if they're facing issues, that they are facing. And it's taking care of, taking care of parents who've got issues and trying to raise a household. And often we run into folks who have children who've these terrible stories we hear. And how did this happen? Jesus, person was on the right track, and next thing you know, they're hooked. So these are two ways that we think government needs to be involved to lessen some of the burden and really help the heart of the issue on both issues for families struggling with these issues. Also, very, very proud of our budget. We've done some great things, and we tackle many different aspects to make sure that the Commonwealth of Massachusetts has a high quality of life. During this past session, U.S. News & World Report, I believe, said Massachusetts, maybe 2 years ago, #1 in the nation in terms of quality of life. Well, that just doesn't happen. That's because you have government, the private sector, you have educational institutes, healthcare institutions, all working together to compromise and come up with good ways of making sure that the quality of life is second to none here. Does that mean everything's perfect? Not even close. A lot of work to be done. But we want to have robust discussions and try to tackle and solve issues with all of these institutions working together. And I think you often see that reflected in the budget that both the rep and myself work on continuously through the year to make sure that money is coming into our schools, into our local communities, and making sure that there is a high quality of life in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, and also acknowledging there's still a lot of work to be done.
Yeah, and I think that that's important. A lot of people might not want to hear that someone's satisfied. Once we hit a #1 position, it's not, okay, we can kind of take a break and ease up. It's how do we continue?
That's
How
right.
do we improve even
That's right.
further? Nothing can ever be perfect, and I'm glad to know that there is always going to be work that's done on those issues.
Always work to be done,
Absolutely.
you know. And but again, having a high quality life doesn't just happen overnight. It happens because there are a lot of work being done, a lot of discussions being done, a lot of research being done, and a lot of collaboration.
It's not just one person.
Not just one person calling the shots.
It takes a village.
It totally does, absolutely, 100%.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So a lot of what we've been talking about today, pretty much all of what we've been talking about today, is things that are happening on a state level. And I'm wondering if we can just take a little bit of time and talk a little bit about anything that you both might think is important for people to know that's coming on a federal level. Something that people might not be familiar with or know that is coming forward. There's a lot that goes on and there's a lot of information that's hard to keep track of. And I'm curious if you guys can maybe point into the direction for our viewers of something that they don't know and should know.
I will just add, Connor, continuing the conversation with the opioid crisis and the fact of the legislative process, those decisions and that legislation isn't born out of the conversations that Senator Rush has in the Senate chamber, or I have in the House chamber. It happens in classrooms and community health centers and task force meetings throughout every city and town in the Commonwealth, including the towns of Westwood and the communities that we represent together. Then comes the birth of legislation that has the public process of the hearings and the conversations and the debate and the discussion and the enhancement and the retraction and the additions. Massachusetts is the leader in the nation on so many fronts. Senator Rush alluded to healthcare, education. So tackling this opioid crisis, which is not just in the cities and towns that we represent, but across the Commonwealth and throughout the country, we have the good fortune of having a bipartisan cooperation with Governor Baker, Lieutenant Governor Polito, who Governor Baker serves on the National Task Force. The conversations that happened in the town of Westwood and Kitchens that were brought to us and were emailed or text message or personal conversations with citizens, then turned into that legislation. That legislation was adopted and passed and then brought with Governor Baker. And now there's 46 states in our country that have taken the model that Massachusetts started. So when people feel that their voice, as you mentioned earlier in the program, that their voice sometimes doesn't count, make no mistake. I mean, it counts, it's important, and it's an intricate part of the process. It's not Senator Rush and I, although we talk every day, we try to come together on what the priorities are of the town of Westwood and our other communities. But the issues that we go to Beacon Hill to fight for come from the individuals and the residents of Westwood and Dedham and the communities that Senator Rush represents as well, that we're able to form this legislation and continue to keep Massachusetts as a leader. And I know I've been in many committee hearings, and I go personally testify on all the bills that I file and all the bills that I've co-sponsored. There's other individuals from other states that are there to witness what Massachusetts is doing, because Massachusetts somehow, some way seems to get it right. Not all the time, and that's why we talk about there's always that opportunity to come back and reform it and enhance it, but Massachusetts is the leader in so many fronts, and other states follow our model. So particularly proud of that, to work with dedicated legislators that try to make a difference, and we know that it doesn't just have an impact here in the town of Westwood, but throughout the Commonwealth and potentially throughout the country.
And I think that that's an important thing to emphasize, is that, like we were talking about before, how no voice goes unheard, to the point where one person coming forward and bringing up an issue can have an effect on a nationwide level.
Yeah.
And I think that's something that's important and not a lot of people focus on or even think it can reach that level.
Right.
But it absolutely could.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And to your point on the federal level, to sum it up pretty easily, Representative McMurtry and I, regular conversations with our Congressman Stephen Lynch, and we have a great communication back and forth. So he's constantly briefing us on things he's working on the federal level, and in turn, we're telling him about things going on the town level and the state level, and we have robust dialogues on a fairly regular basis. And he's just a tremendous, tremendous asset to this community. And I know I'm going to speak for both of us. We feel so fortunate to have Congressman Lynch and be able to work with him because he's somebody who gets it. So when we have issues that come up on a federal level, maybe to our offices, we call him directly, and he's a hands-on approach congressman who deals with the issue and vice versa. He's constantly feeding us information on federal issues that may affect our communities as well. So it's great to have that partnership, just like we have it with the town. Here for me, it's Norwood, Westwood, Dedham, Dover, and half of the town of Needham.
Did you forget any right there?
But it's critically important that I have relationships with the boards of selectmen, and the town managers and administrators to have this constant dialogue. So it goes both ways. It's from the cities and towns to the state to the federal, and then going both ways constantly.
It's a
up
constant
and down.
two-way street that's always
Constant
going.
two-way street.
Absolutely.
It's really, really critical to be able to have open dialogue and to have eyes on what's going on in the communities, town of Westwood, on the state, and then in the federal government. So it's
Everything's
important.
connected and everything
Everything
comes
is
forward.
connected.
And I will just add, we're fortunate, both, I consider Senator Rush not only a colleague but a friend, but we have that same ongoing conversation with the Board of Selectmen here in Westwood. And as Senator Rush mentioned, Congressman Lynch, I think we probably have the best congressman in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. So it's just, for me, being outside of government, being in a private, a small business, to come into it, to see the level of integrity and honesty and commitment that my colleagues in government have towards serving the district is an immense pleasure. And it's been fantastic.
Absolutely. And you guys help me segue into our final question.
Sure,
as always,
absolutely.
Which is to talk a little bit about community. And you guys mentioned working alongside the Board of Selectmen, with town administrators, with town moderators and whatnot. And I wanted to talk a little bit about why so many community events are so important. We're just coming off the heels of Westwood Day that happened a few days ago. Both of you guys were there. At our police station ribbon cutting ceremony, both of you were there. I know with you, Representative McMurtry, you have the ice cream social that goes on at the Council on Aging in the middle of the summer. All these are very important events. And I wanted to give you guys a moment to kind of talk about what value you get out of them, why they're so important for both of you to be able to be representative there.
Senator.
All right, so anyway, it's vitally important for me as an elected official to be in the communities and the neighborhoods and the towns I represent because it's huge in opinion forming for me when I get to have one-on-one conversations with individuals. People seem to be very candid when they see you, whether it's at a formalized event like the ones you've mentioned, or whether I'm shopping at Roach Brothers or at Dunkin' Donuts and people stop me and want to have a conversation. It's those faces that I connect with issues. Now that doesn't mean we always agree, but to be able to have a civil discourse, to be able to have a discussion. I like the fact somebody's comfortable to stop me at a ribbon cutting, at a Westwood Day, or whether it's I'm doing my grocery shopping or grabbing a coffee, and to be able to tell me their opinions because it keeps me grounded in the district I represent. And again, not to say we're always going to agree, but I get tremendous, tremendous insight when individuals want to give me their opinions on issues that affect them and their families. So it's really, really important. This is where the rubber hits the road in the communities and the towns at the Westwood Day, having conversations with people about issues affecting them in their everyday quality of life. It effectuates policy making, as said earlier by Representative McMurtry and yourself. So
Yeah.
really important, key critical for us as elected officials to be out in the community.
Yeah, and I like that you allude to the fact that when you do speak with people, even just passing by, that you're not always going to agree. If everybody agreed on everything, then,
That's right.
our policies or decisions would be a lot different.
That's right.
And I think it's important that people understand that civil discourse, that disagreement does not always have to be a negative thing.
That's right.
That's how a lot of issues are hashed out. That's how a
Absolutely.
lot of things are, bring perspectives in.
Yeah.
I think that's a very important thing to allude to.
Very good. No, I agree.
Absolutely.
And Connor, I will only add, continuing Senator Rush's sentiment, that both Senator Rush and I don't go to Beacon Hill for ourselves. We are, granted, politicians, and I know there's a negative connotation to that, but more than that, we're public servants. So we work on behalf of every citizen in the town of Westwood. They're our bosses. They get to decide whether or not we continue to work, whether or not we get fired, and we have to listen to them. So, and again, the actions, the priorities, the resources that we bring back to this community, the issues and the concerns that need to be addressed are not coming from Senator Rush and I. Although we talk about it, they come from the citizens we represent. So I can't emphasize that enough. It is really, when you have the firsthand insight, and I know both Senator Rush and I welcome, folks into the State House. We have a group coming up, a group of seniors that's due to come in. You get to see firsthand some insight into the inner workings and what actually takes place. And make no mistake, both Senator Rush and I are there on behalf of the residents of Westwood. And as mentioned, we don't get it right all the time. And I know people are passionate about issues, and sometimes, there's a disagreement. For me, I get strength through that passion, but also through the respectful dialogue. And it's not an easy job, but it's something that I know both of us work collaboratively together, so make sure that we can do the best we can representing this town and delivering back on the needs and the services, not only for the individual residents, but the community as a whole, and partnering with our selectmen to make sure that the quality of life for those who live here, raise a family, and work in the town of Westwood is by the top of the and the best in the Commonwealth.
Absolutely. It's all for the people. That's what it comes down to at the end of the day. So before we wrap up, I wanted to give you guys, if you wanted to, take a minute. You have a camera in front of you. You have access to a whole host of people that you can speak to. If there's any issues that you want to bring up, if there's anything that you want to say or emphasize, any messages that you want to get out there, now is the chance to kind of get it out there for them.
Sure. I'm Senator Mike Rush. I will be on the ballot this fall to represent you in the Massachusetts State Senate. It has been an honor and a privilege serving you since I got sworn in 2011. And I am asking for your vote. I am asking to go back and work on behalf of the people, the citizens of the town of Westwood, work with your local government, work with Representative McMurtry to make sure that the quality of life in the town of Westwood is second to none. And to continue to listen and work with you on your behalf. I'm on the ballot in November, and again, I respectfully ask for your vote. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Well, again, Representative Paul McMurtry, it has been an enormous honor and privilege to represent and serve the citizens of Westwood. And as Senator Rush mentioned, on November 6th, the community has a choice. I hope to have earned your continued trust, and I hope to seek in my return to the Massachusetts House of Representatives with the support and the votes of the residents of not only Westwood but the entire district that I represent. It's been a privilege and an honor. I know the work. It's been 11 years, but my work's not done. We're at a point where the legislature's been an enormous turnover. I want to continue to, in a bipartisan way, in a collaborative effort with both our colleagues in the Senate, the leadership of the House of Representatives, and the administration to continue to deliver on those services and needs. And as mentioned, I too would be honored to earn your vote and return on your behalf to work for you and with you come November 6th. Thank you.
Absolutely. I want to thank you guys both for coming on the show today.
Thank you, Connor. Thanks for having us.
Pleasure and a privilege to have you back,
That's
and
great.
Hopefully to see you guys again very soon.
We should do it
Anytime.
more often.
Absolutely.
Anytime.
Thank you again to both Representative McMurtry and Senator Rush for coming out to Westwood today to talk politics and to give us a look behind the scenes. Be sure to check out our website at westwoodmediacenter.tv to see all of our content and see our entire video on-demand library on YouTube. For now, my name is Connor Lynch. Thank you for watching, and tune in next time for some more Town Talk.